Creepers left to rise, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to steal my lady. Spiders in the mirror and films can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision still frozen tight. Spill drink as Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? We're dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life. And when we make love, babe, don't make a sound, the clock won't turn around. Ooh, you turn around, 2,000 little fire.
Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're starting another vlog, another weekly reading vlog, and Kazi brought me his toy. Right, his toy? Can you come see the people? Oh, thanks. That's all you get, sorry. Go get it. So, this week's vlog is one that I'm pretty excited about. So, my friend Sam from Sam Reads A Little and I have been talking about, for a while, we've been talking about each picking books for the other one to read and then vlogging it. And we both have kind of been hesitant because we're like, sometimes we don't have super similar tastes. Like, there are a few books that Sam and I like really agree on, and then there are others that we really don't agree on. And so I've been a little nervous to pick books for her because I don't necessarily have what I feel like is a good like pin on what her taste is, you know? So I didn't want to give her books that I like deeply loved and that she wouldn't like. But you know, that's okay though, because not everybody likes the same books. Not everybody takes the same thing away from books. I know that. Logically, I know that. But still, it always worries me and it always makes me feel bad when I recommend books and people, maybe if they don't like them or, you know, a lot of y'all tell me how much you love my recommendations, but I also recognize that everybody has different tastes, and I feel like sometimes specifically things I'm looking in for in books are kind of quite a bit different than what most people are looking for in books. Anyway, I am nothing if not on brand for having a very long vlog opening. So, my point is, I will have Sam's video linked down below, so please make sure to go and check that out and see the books that I picked for her and if she liked them or not. Ow, I just poked myself with the corner of this book. So these are the books that she picked for me. So I actually owned this one. I bought this one from a Target sale a few months ago. I know I bought it after I read the Fisherman series in December, and because I wanted to read more from this author, and this one was on the Target sale, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's try it. And then, you know, as per usual, it has languished and I haven't put it as a priority. So Sam wanted me to read this, so I'm very excited about that. And then she picked two books that I did not own, which I then went and bought for this vlog. And one of them surprised me because it was a YA. Now, I have heard a lot of good things about this YA. It is a National Book Award finalist, and I personally I haven't read any in a really long time, but I still have a deep love for YA books that focus on family relationships. Like, I just think those are so beautifully done most of the time, depending on the author who writes it. So I'm very excited about this. I've heard wonderful things, and I know Sam really loved it. I truly don't know much of what it's about other than it's YA. Sam loved it. And it says down here, what does it mean to be a family? So I'm assuming there's probably a found family aspect in here, which is something that I also really love. So I'm really excited about this one. And then, so those two I haven't started. I actually have started a book for this vlog. And I decided to start this book, After I Do, by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So, Sam loves Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she really loves this book. I believe, unless my memory is truly terrible, I believe this was Sam's favorite book from last year. Favorite. So, that makes me a little nervous about that, you know? And I have only read one book from Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it was, of course, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I loved. I thought that book was freaking amazing, but it's been many years since I read that book, and I just haven't picked any of hers up since then, you know. But I did really love that. I was very impressed with her writing. I think that she has a really interesting way of telling a story and weaving in some love story elements. Like, she's definitely not a romance writer, but I know that most of her books have love story elements, but it's you know, Evelyn Hugo didn't have an HEA, so, you know. And I just feel like I was talking to Jen today about how, you know, it used to not be, like, before 2020, I read romance, but I also read a lot of other genres, and it didn't really matter to me if a book had an HEA. Now 2020 happens, and I have to really be in a very specific mood to read a book that I know doesn't have an HEA, and if I read what has been sold to me as a romance and it doesn't have an HEA, I get really mad. And if you didn't know, HEA means happily ever after, which is what romance novels need to have to be called a romance. Anyway, my point is, so, I'm nervous about this book. I am nervous about it. But I know Sam loved it, so largely when I am picking up a book that I kind of feel nervous about, but I'm also curious about, I sort of try to lean hard into the curiosity that I feel about this book and why my friend really loved it. Even if I don't have a similar experience with that book, I'm always really curious to read my friend's favorite books so I can kind of understand, or even if I don't understand, experience the book. And I just think it's an interesting reading time to read somebody's favorite book, and then even if you didn't love it, it's like, huh, I can see why they love it. Or sometimes it's literally like, I don't know why you loved it, I didn't love it, and that's okay too. Okay, so anyway, I am reading this book. So this is fiction. This is definitely not romance. I don't know that I would call this, I feel like this one is probably in the direction of women's fiction. It definitely feels women's fiction to me, because the basic plot of this is we have a married couple. The book opens and they are having troubles in their marriage, and they're fighting and all kinds of stuff. And so they decide to separate for 1 year. They're not going to live together. They're going to live their lives as though they were single. So that means things like an open marriage and just literally living their life as if they were not married, but they're not getting a divorce. And so I'm going to be completely honest with you and tell you that I'm not really enjoying this book. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the books that I've mentioned recently in my reading vlogs that I haven't enjoyed, the reason that I haven't enjoyed them is something to do with the writing. It's either a underdeveloped writing skill that shows itself in sort of knee-jerk, whiplashy emotional moments, or overdoing trauma, or not getting enough character development, or sometimes it is the story as well, as in it doesn't really have a great plot, or maybe it doesn't have a great pace. There's something lacking in the story that makes me feel bored, or something in the characters that makes me feel not invested, you know? So some type of writing flaw like that. So that is not what's happening here. Taylor Jenkins Reid is an incredible writer. This is a very well-paced book. The story is interesting. The characters are very well developed. You know who they are. You have a good grasp on how they feel and what they're experiencing, and even a little bit of their history, because this book does go back in time a little bit as well. So it's interesting because I haven't read a book that has been this well written that I haven't liked in a really long time. In a really long time. And I can think of several literary fiction or just mainstream fiction books that fit that bill for me, where I just am not enjoying the story. So let me tell you why I'm not enjoying this as briefly as possible, because I have to leave in just a second. So, as you would expect, this book is pretty depressing as it describes their marriage breaking apart. There are definitely some scenes in here that are very detailed, that show the breakdown of their marriage, that show they really don't like each other, that show them falling out of love, or even proclaiming to be out of love. And it feels, in that moment, very hopeless. And to me, it feels like I'm experiencing a lot of despair, because you can tell that this couple recognizes that there were things that they didn't address in their marriage. They've been married for, I believe, 11 years. that they didn't address, or that they let kind of slide and not let go, which has resulted in them falling out of love, or, I mean, yeah, for lack of a better word, falling out of love. And that's just really heartbreaking. So I don't love that, because that's just not what I want to read, you know? I love second chance romances. I do. That's technically what this is, I believe. Ultimately, in the end, it will be. I am about halfway through it right now. However, the thing that I love about second chance romances is, and I get that this is a more fantasy version of a second chance romance, whereas this feels very much like a real life situation. But second chance romances appeal to me because I love seeing a couple who is meant to be together work through their problems and come back together. And a lot of times the problems that are occurring in those second chance romances are things that are a little larger than life than what is in here, right? This marriage broke down because they stopped communicating, because they stopped expressing their feelings to one another, because they stopped putting their marriage first, and then you can see these little resentments that are building towards one another, and that's just painful to read. I don't enjoy reading that at all, so that's not a fun time. This isn't an enjoyable reading experience for me. At this point, I'm saying I don't care how good the writing is, I don't like this story. It's depressing, it's sad, this is not what I want to be reading at this stage today in my life. It's well written, but I still don't like it. So, yeah. It's interesting. At this point in the book, halfway through, we're just barely seeing the heroine, I don't know if Lauren, the female main character, we're just barely seeing her accepting that maybe her husband has moved along quicker than she did, and that hurts her, and she's trying to now finally accept that maybe I should move on with my life as well. And so she's just started to do that. So I don't know. I don't know how else to describe this other than I don't particularly like it right now. That being said, I've got 50% of the book left. So I will say this is striking me as the type of book that if this ends in despair or an ambivalent type of ending, I'm going to probably rate this very low, because I just don't want to read that, you know? I don't like that. That's a personal taste. If this ends with them getting back together, and I'm going to tell you guys if it ends with them getting back together or not, so if you don't want to know that, when I come back, you can fast forward. I didn't ask Sam because I kind of wanted to just experience this book for whatever it was, and I'm going into this knowing this is not a romance, so it's fiction with a love story, I'm assuming. So, if this has a very powerful emotional payoff at the end, where they get back together and it feels both realistic and emotionally satisfying for me, then I will probably like this book. It depends on how strongly that ending hits me, if that's the way the story is going. If it ends without them getting back together, I don't think I'm gonna like it, you know? So, yeah. I don't know. I picked this book first, specifically because, based on what I knew about the story, that it was a married couple who was having struggles in their marriage, and then they took a year apart and find their way back to one another, I had a feeling that I wasn't gonna love this, and so I decided to start with this first, because I knew that if I didn't, I would put it off, and I didn't want to do that. So, alright, this is a very long opening clip. I will be back probably when I'm finished with this, because I expect to finish it today. I'm listening to the audio and it's going very quickly. And I'll come back when I have finished it with my final thoughts. So, thank you so much for being here, y'all, and I'll see you in a bit. Look at this big girl. Look at this big girl. Look at this. Wanda, look. Wanda. Look. Wanda, look right here. Look right here. Can you see? Look at her beard. I'm holding her on my lap. Can you see how much bigger she is from when we first got here? She clearly doesn't want to be held. Okay. There. She wants to go play with Kazi. Anyway, hello friends, welcome back to the vlog. So, today is Saturday. I had every intention of filming a vlog clip yesterday, but I have them separated for right now so that I can film this vlog clip, but there's still a lot of protesting in the version of whining happening. It's fine though, it's fine. Anyway, I had every intention of filming a vlog clip yesterday because I had finished this book and I wanted to update you on it, but I had a quite terrible flare-up yesterday and couldn't function very well in the afternoon to evening, so anyway, moving right along. So, I finished this book. We're going to talk about that. And then I also finished this book, so I didn't update you at all while I was reading this. So I have 2 books to recap right now. Let's do it. So, let's talk about the Taylor Jenkins Reid first. So, this book, I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I enjoyed, I don't know if that's the right word I want to use. I felt some frustration as I was reading this, and I wasn't overly invested in the story, but I still found myself getting swept away in the story. But I did not feel satisfied with this book in the end, and I'm going to tell you why. So, this book is a second chance romance. I talked about that in my first clip. And so, the reason that they decide on a trial separation is never really explicitly stated in this book, and I feel like the idea for why they did this separation was, I feel like the message the author was trying to get across was because they just didn't do the little things in their marriage, so it kind of got stale, it was lacking freshness, they were taking each other for granted, they were holding things in instead of, you know, speaking about how they actually felt, and that last one is really the gist of why their marriage was, why they were feeling frustrated with each other. So I'm going to tell you my own personal feelings on that, because with both of these books, a spoiler alert for both of these, I'm not spoiling the story, I'm spoiling how I feel about it. With both of these books, I found there to be a roadblock in how the author chose to cause the tension in their relationship. And that was the thing that made me not fully enjoy both of these. And I feel like oftentimes when we read something like a fantasy, you hear the phrase used a lot, like, I couldn't suspend my disbelief. Like, the author didn't do a good job of making that believable for me. Even though the situation maybe is really far-fetched, like some of the mafia romances that I've read that I completely 100% believe that can happen. Or whether it's something that is very mundane and everyday, such as just the mundaneness or the common feeling of a marriage just feeling stale. You know, both of those things, you would think the mafia one would be more likely to be unbelievable, something that we would find a difficult time suspending our disbelief for. But it really comes down to how the author chooses to present that material to you and how much can they get you to believe that this story is actually happening, that this is a scenario that is very real. And I also feel like it's interesting talking about that with romance, because I feel like romance, for me, has to kind of straddle that line really perfectly. It has to be believable for me. I have to be able to believe it, but that means that if it is far-fetched, that author has got to really do some work to make it feel grounded in reality. And if it's something that is a little bit more of a mundane, everyday life story like this one, they also have to do a lot of work to get me invested in the couple and how their relationship is functioning, you know? So, the main reason why this couple didn't work for most of the book, this does have an HEA, by the way, and if you Google it, it's listed as a romance novel. Let me check on one. It's fine, she's just chewing on a toy, but she was being very suspiciously quiet. So if you Google this, it's listed in several genres, like romance novel, fiction, women's fiction, all that other stuff, and I do feel like it does have a happily ever after. The romance is the romance and the heroine's growth is the central plot of the story, so I feel like it's probably more women's fiction, personally. But the entire reason why they decided they needed a break from their marriage was really based in miscommunication. They weren't telling each other how they felt about things that the other person was doing that was either bothering or hurting them or just frustrating them, you know? One of the main things that the hero expresses frustration to the heroine about their relationship is that she likes international food and he just wants to order pizzas. And I'm just like, that's an interesting choice that Taylor Jenkins Reid would choose that, something that is so mundane, to illustrate why this marriage wasn't working. I feel like personally, if that's your biggest issue in your marriage, like, you probably have a pretty decent marriage, but also, if you think that's the biggest issue in your marriage, you're probably not examining it very closely, because there's definitely something else if that's the thing that's going to send you over the edge and let you choose an open relationship, you know? So because the author chose to use that as an example for the hero's dissatisfaction in their marriage, it immediately made me go, are you serious? Are you serious? It made the stakes feel very low, because I feel like it's a super petty, childish reason to want to end an 11-year relationship or take a break from an 11-year relationship, and to take a break that includes sleeping with other people. Like, I don't know, man, you can call me old-fashioned all you want, but if it's not polyamory and you feel like an open relationship is going to solve your marriage, like, I just do not 100% believe that. I am not on board with that at all. I feel like the betrayal and harm, no matter if you both say that it's consensual, if it's not polyamory, right? If you're just trying to experiment and spice up, like, no, that's not gonna work. I don't believe that at all. So, I was frustrated about that, okay? I was also frustrated with the way that the author showed any growth or conflict resolution happening in here, because I didn't really feel like any growth was happening in the heroine. She would, like, the things that she did while she was separated from her husband. She lost some weight, she took up running, she slept with the guy, had a good time, you know. I mean, that was good because that made her realize that her needs were important too, so, like, I see the value there. Like, the weight loss thing was kind of like, I don't know that was necessary. And, you know, whatever. And then the other thing was, what else did she do? I don't even know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what she did. The transformation, the growth that she was supposed to undergo throughout this break in their relationship was extremely minimal, superficial, and wasn't really shown on page. It was very much an introspective process, largely through the email drafts that her husband was writing, assuming she would never read them. That's how she grew in their relationship, and he did the same thing to her, because then she started writing email drafts, and because they both had access to each other's emails, they were reading each other's email draft letters they were writing to each other without the intention of sending them. And so that begs the question of, why was this entire book written about miscommunication? And it was never resolved, other than they went behind each other's backs and read the email drafts they weren't supposed to see, you know? So it just, like, really didn't work for me, okay? It really didn't work for me. Again, like I said earlier, the writing style is solid. Like, her writing flows very well. The story is easily to get invested in, and I didn't hate reading the story, but it just felt unsatisfying for me, and I just found it really hard to connect with the characters, and I found it really difficult to even care if they got back together, because the reason for their breakup seemed so petty and childish. I just was like, I mean, you're gonna throw away a relationship you're committed to because you don't want to speak up and say you'd rather order a pizza? Like, I don't know, man. It just didn't work for me, you know? So, that being said, I did enjoy the ending. The ending was sweet. It was cute. It didn't really seem to fit the rest of the tone of the book, which felt a little bit melancholy, you know? Like, the opening, watching the breakdown of their marriage was sad and depressing, and I really didn't like that at all. And then the rest of the book really didn't have a good vibe that meshed with the almost over-the-top happily ever after in the ending. But, you know, me being the sucker that I am for an HEA, I really liked that. I just wish that we had gotten some actual growth from the characters instead of just something that felt very superficial. That's just me. I I know everybody loves Taylor Jenkins Reid. I get it. Her books, you know, like, but I'm sorry, I'm cutting off my sentences. When I compare this to Evelyn Hugo, which is my only other book I've read by her, like, this seems like such a huge step down. Evelyn Hugo is a masterpiece, and this seems like it's just not. I'm so sorry, Sam. I'm so sorry. I did not hate this book. I really didn't. I know I'm being critical. Probably I'm being critical because as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm thinking of things that I can talk about, things that bothered me, and so there you go. So I did not hate this book. I liked it. 3 stars. Found some things to be frustrating about it. I did really enjoy the ending. Like, the reason that she wants to get back with her husband is she has some tragedy happen in her family. She loses a family member, and she's wishing that her husband was there to comfort her. And that is when she thinks, you know, there's a quote that goes around on Instagram from time to time that's like, you know, chemistry and attraction is very short-lived. It doesn't mean anything. Love is the person you want there for you at 2 a.m. consoling you in your grief. And I'm just like, yep. And that's what she realized in that moment, was she wanted him there. And that, but again, like, I liked that realization, but it also felt very hollow because I just, I guess it's just that classic example of you don't know what you have until it's gone. But it just, to me, felt really sad that, not just that they experienced a break, but specifically that they agreed to sleep with other people, only to realize that that's the person I want consoling me in my grief at 2 a.m., you know? I don't know. Anyway, 3 stars. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. Clearly I had some issues with it, but Taylor Jenkins Reid is a beautiful wordsmith, you know? She has a way with words and telling a story, but this one is not a masterpiece in my opinion. Okay, moving right along. So then I read Look the Part by Jewel E. Ann. So this is a contemporary romance. The only other books by Jewel E. Ann that I have read is her Fisherman duet, which I did enjoy a lot. I did have some issues with that one, but I enjoyed that story a lot. I enjoyed that story a lot, and I enjoyed that story more than I enjoyed Look the Part. So this book, I also gave 3 stars, but if I am being completely 100% like the true person that I am, is probably closer to a 2.5. But we're gonna go with 3 because it's not a poorly written book. It is a compelling story. It just didn't work for me, and let me tell you why. Wanda, quit. So this book has quite a bit of tragedy in here. It opens with our hero who is married, and he has a son with his wife. It's mentioned that he's an alcoholic. He ends up getting drunk. Wanda, what are you doing? And driving home with his wife and kid. They get in a car accident, and he is responsible for his wife's death. So that's the trauma surrounding the entire book here. So then years pass, and his son is now grown up. He's like a teenager. I think he's like 12 or 13 or 14, somewhere around there. And the hero is a lawyer, and he owns this building. He's the landlord, and this woman comes in to rent from him, and she does like music therapy and things like that. The hero's son is on the spectrum, and so he ends up gravitating towards this woman and learning how to play guitar from her. The heroine is very like quirky. Like, she has pet rats. She is very much the sunshine to the hero's grumpy. And from the beginning, like, she has this big attraction to him, like, huge. She compares him to Henry Cavill and Superman, you know, like, she's extremely attracted to him, talks about how good he looks in a suit all the time in her head or with her friends, and just really, what are you doing, puppy? Thank you. Sorry, babysitting puppies. Just really, really, really attracted to him. And the hero is a jerk to her. Quite a jerk. Yeah, huge jerk to her. And that never dims her attraction to him at all. So I'll tell you why I ended up giving this book 3 stars. So the whole book is just their romance, right? How it's going to work out. It's a little bit of a hate to love. It's grumpy sunshine. It's not really hate, but it's definitely like antagonistic on his part. Like, she is almost always kind and understanding. Do not chew that stuff, please. Puppies, am I right? Like, she's very kind and understanding of him, even when he is just flat out rude to her. And it was interesting to me because she never really let the way he treated her affect the attraction that she had for him. And that doesn't vibe with me at all, because I have known some really beautiful people who I absolutely 100% could not stand to be around because their personality was just so gross. They were mean, they were cruel, maybe not to me, but to other people, and I'm just like, you may have a pretty paper on the outside, but on the inside you are not pretty at all. So, right away, Wanda, come here. Hold on. So, right away, early on in the book, they have a physical encounter, and it really, to me, felt like they went from, like, 0 to 60, like, way too fast. Like, I just didn't... And that's where we come to the point again where I found it very difficult to suspend my disbelief, you know? Because of the way that they had acted towards one another, specifically how the hero acted towards the heroine, just a bit of a jerk to her, and she was just sort of, like, still panting after him, and I'm just like, I don't like this, I don't get this, I am not invested in your relationship, because and I'm not saying, right, that doesn't happen in real life, or that it couldn't happen in real life, or that couldn't lead to real feelings with one another, but I am saying that for my reading enjoyment, it was 0. I just didn't love that, you know, like, I don't need my heroes to be just completely soft and kind to the heroine, but I also don't love a hero who is such a jerk to the heroine, and she just, like, continues to be nice to him and continues to lust after him, and I'm just like, I find it really hard to be invested in a relationship that's built around something like that, you know? So, yeah, I didn't really feel any type of an emotional connection with this couple. It felt like the emotional connection that they had was through his son, how his son really bonded with her, and how much the hero liked. And that even, you know, that's mentioned in the book. He asks himself often, like, do I actually like her, or do I just like that she's kind to my son and she's helping my son, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. I found this couple to be unlikable. The heroine almost seemed overly sweet and sunshiny, and the hero seemed a little overly grumpy, and so in that way they kind of felt like a parody, and I feel like that also decreased my ability to suspend my disbelief because it didn't have a realistic feel. And I'm not saying it needs to be realistic, but it needs to feel realistic, you know? And I think that that's largely the way that this author would continually go from, like, 0 to 60 so fast, not in just the physical intimate scenes, but also in any interaction that they had. It was almost like a little bit, emotional instability, but not a lot, right? So, yeah, I did, okay, so I don't really think this is a 2. I did like this book. I do see the appeal here. I mean, especially if you love an enemies to lovers type of thing, I think you would probably really like this. I just was really wanting a little bit more subtlety in the development of their relationship from, if they're gonna be antagonistic grumpy sunshine, I want to see it evolve a little bit more on page than just physical attraction, because that's just not what I like personally. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars. I'm glad I read it. I didn't love it, and I did like the Fisherman series better than this, so okay, we're gonna put those down. So I talked for a very long time. 3 stars. 3 stars for these. Now I have 1 book left, which I'm gonna go read right now, and it is this one, Far From the Tree. So this is the YA book. I actually was gonna start this second. I don't know why I didn't. I just decided to go with Look the Part. So now I'm gonna start this. I'm very excited. I'm in the mood for some found family, beautiful YA. So I will update you guys probably, truth be told, when I'm finished with this, because I have ended up talking quite a bit. And I'll see y'all in my next clip when I have something new to report.
The last breath of summer is blowing down our necks, and soon we'll wave goodbye to to fleeting bliss. Because you are like a tidal wave, just ripping up my life, not living without a trace. And you know that I'm your silent patient. You know I'm your silent patient. I've been waiting this long out for your hands to hold me up. I'll be holding on through the winter for you.
Hello, my friends. Okay, welcome back to the final clip of this vlog. So, I finished Far From the Tree. This is, I don't actually know if I mentioned this, this is a YA book, and this is a contemporary, I feel like this is a pretty hard-hitting, almost like a literary fiction type of book. It's basically about these three siblings who were given up for adoption, and they're in separate families, you know. Two of them are adopted, two of them have been adopted, one of them has sort of, the oldest one, the boy, his name is Joaquin, he's sort of been through the foster system multiple times, and he's finally in a home with a family who wants to adopt him, but he has so much trauma and damage from his whole life of being shuffled around and the things that have happened to him specifically, that he is very wary of trusting and feeling like he might have a home with people who love him. The other sibling, one of the other siblings' name is Maya, and she is a lesbian, and she has very supportive parents. She was adopted because her parents believed they couldn't have kids, and then, of course, they had one, like, shortly after she was adopted, but she has a great, loving home. Her parents love her. There is definitely, her mother is an alcoholic. She goes into treatment for that in this book, and her parents separate. The third sibling is Grace, and that's actually who the book opens with, and she is adopted, very loving family, loving parents. In the beginning of the book it opens, she's pregnant, she's a teenager, still in high school, I think she's a junior, and she ends up deciding to give her baby up for adoption. And so a lot of her narrative is about how that has affected her, being such a young woman and having a pregnancy, knowing she can't take care of this baby, doing what is best for this baby, and really struggling with that heartache and missing her child. Like, I felt like, for me personally, I connected very deeply with Grace and very deeply with Joaquin, and their two stories really tugged at my heart the most. This book is overall pretty heavy and a bit sad. It does end beautifully and happily, and things work out in the end. The journey to get there is not super harrowing, but it is very realistic and also pretty sad. And one of the things that I feel like this book does really well is show these kids working through the trauma that has been inflicted upon them their whole life, mostly Joaquin, and how that affects every single choice, every single relationship throughout his whole life. You know, you can see very clearly the damage that this broken foster care system has wrought upon Joaquin, and how he deals with his family, and how he deals with just relationships in his life, and how he processes things that are hard for him. And he deals with, like, violence. He ends up being really violent when things get too difficult for him to mentally handle. So basically the book has their separate stories, but they all converge because I think it's Grace's mother who said, hey, you have siblings, why don't you go find them? And so they meet up and they try to find their birth mother, and it was beautiful. This was a very, very beautiful book. It was very moving. It was pretty gripping. I enjoyed reading it. I couldn't stop listening to it. I think of all the books that Sam recommended, this is the one that I was the most invested in. And I think that's partly because of the heartbreaking stories these kids were involved in, but I think it also could be because they're kids, and I wanted to make sure that things worked out for them and that they were happy. Like, there was a very specific scene in here when Grace comes back to school. Her boyfriend, the father of the baby, kind of just, like, left her, was super a jerk to her, basically left her, abandoned her, didn't want anything to do with her once he realized she was pregnant, and his parents were just terrible. So she comes back to school after she has given her baby up for adoption. And can you even imagine, I cannot imagine coming to a setting like high school after you have gone through such a physically traumatic event as giving birth and an emotionally traumatic event as giving birth, as well as the added emotional trauma of giving your baby up for adoption. Like, I cannot even imagine how difficult that must be. So she comes back to school, and there's a scene where her ex-boyfriend, this father of the baby, and some of his dipwad friends are there, and they're teasing her, talking to her about her body, talking to her about how loose she is, you know, how her pregnant body had changed, asking her boobs were saggy now, and just really terrible. And then, like, the final straw is one of the boys, not her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, plays the sound of a newborn baby crying, and Grace just completely loses it, and she decks him, and then she ends up suspended for the rest of the school year. And I was so moved by that scene, like, my heart just, like, broke. I have not read a scene that viscerally emotional in a very long time, and it was very powerful. When she ends up talking to her siblings about this, Joaquin is extremely protective and, you know, says good, and I don't know, I loved that they were there for her in that moment, even though she didn't fully disclose what happened, because she's hesitant, she's nervous to tell them that she got pregnant and gave this baby up for adoption. So this book was really powerful. It was really powerful. It was beautifully written. It was super emotional. Like, the way that this author was able to so clearly evoke emotion with such few words. And this is a very short book. I think it's only, like, probably 300-ish pages. 375. It was beautiful. It was beautifully well done. I will say that I'm going to rate this 5 stars on Goodreads. For me, I feel like this is closer to a 4-star, and that's only because I didn't feel satisfied enough that they had to, okay, I'm messing this up. I wanted them to go into more detail about some of their experience they had in the past and how that affected them in the future. And I felt like, because this was a YA novel, I felt like it wasn't necessarily glossed over, but there were moments that were skipped that I think that if this had been an adult novel, it would have gone into detail in those areas more. However, I'm not going to penalize it for being something that it isn't. You know, this is a YA novel. I'm not the target audience for YA. I'm going to rate it 5 stars because I think it's beautiful and powerful, and I feel like there are so many teens who I am sure could benefit from this book, and I hope that it finds its way into their hands because it was beautiful. But reading this as an adult and wanting a little bit more meat to the story than was here, that's really the only reason I'm not fully convinced it's a 5-star read for me personally. But again, I'm not going to penalize it because it's not because it's not giving me an adult reading experience when this is not an adult book, you know what I mean? So I'm going to rate it as 5 stars for sure. And I do think it's beautiful. And as an adult reading this book, this YA book, it was still completely moving and powerful and just absolutely beautiful. So I feel like if you're looking for something that has a lot more depth into maybe adopted children's lives and children who are in the foster home situation, like, I feel like this is a beautiful book for you. If you really, honestly, I feel like if you just want a book about siblings and found family and adoption and people trying to find home, I would recommend this book. It was beautiful. It was really, really well done. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, 4.5, 5 stars. It was great. It was fantastic. National Book Award winner for a good reason. This was great. I really enjoyed it. So, all right, there we have it. So, the books that I read, thank you so much, Sam. Honestly, even though I didn't fully, even though these weren't 5-star reads for me, I still had so much fun reading these books this weekend. Sam, I appreciate you picking these out for me. I really love that this gave me a chance to sort of step out of my box, step out of, the typical historicals and the romances that I read. This was a ton of fun. I loved this reading vlog. I loved going on this reading adventure. It was very, very fun. And this book is going to stick with me for a really long time. I loved it, and I'm really glad that she picked this for me because I don't know that I would have otherwise. I think that I know I would have gotten to this one eventually, but these two specifically, I don't know. I don't think I would have gotten to these. These are just not books that I would typically reach for. So I'm grateful that she picked both of these. So if I were to pick a favorite, it's obviously Far From the Tree was my favorite for sure. And then out of these two, I can't tell. I think I probably would pick Look the Part as my second favorite. And then this one is definitely not my favorite. This was probably my least favorite from the weekend. I'm very, very sorry about that, but it is what it is. But anyway, these were great. These were great books. I don't expect a 5-star reading experience every time I pick up a book. What I want is just I want books that I can think about, books that I can talk about, books that are different and unique, that is a good story. Overall, that's what I'm looking for, is a good story. So I felt like I got that, and I'm grateful. Thank you so much, Sam. This was so fun. And make sure y'all go check out her video. I will have it linked down below as soon as I have a link ready. And thank you so much for watching, my friends. Hope you enjoyed this video, this vlog. And yeah, I'll see you in my next one. If you want to leave me an emoji, why don't you leave me something for summer? Because the kids are out of school now, and maybe like a beach ball or an ocean wave or whatever emoji you think of when you think of summer. But if you don't want to think of anything, just leave me a beach ball. All right. Thanks, my friends. I'll see you in my next video.